Hello and welcome to Enquire to Choir. My name is Eva and I'm here to help you, fellow choir people. You're thinking about leaving your choir director position. Okay, let's talk about it. If you're here watching this thinking, why does this need a separate video, Eva? If I want to quit, I will quit. Well, that's great for you, but probably there are people out there who have been in their choir director's position with a particular choir for a very long time, or for a significant amount of time, or they're just beginning to be in that position but still struggling with the position and they're thinking of leaving. It's much easier to leave a choir when you're in a professional setting. If you are under contract in a professional choir, you have your contract, and if you don't want to pursue another one, you can just leave. This doesn't happen for most of the amateur choirs I know, and for most of the choir directors I know. It is usually the choir director's decision if it's not the choir themselves wanting the particular choir director to leave, but I hope you're not in that position. It's not easy to leave because it's a specific position and probably you're attached to those people and you have many thoughts about how will they do without me? How can I do this? Will I let them down? They will be lost without me, or maybe they will be happy to get someone new. It's a tricky thought process. So let's go through this, okay? Let's just go through this. Let's just talk about the fact that maybe you're thinking about leaving your choir and you're not sure what to think about that. Okay, so let's start. I don't know in which position you are when it comes to how you feel, what the atmosphere is like in your choir, and I don't know how you got to that position, to the choir director's position. Maybe you were selected from the previous choir members. Maybe you were the only one who was willing to take the choir director's position in your choir. That's a very common thread here on the channel. Maybe you were selected from a very huge group at the audition process, but whatever the story is, the situation you are in could be very different. The motivation to leave is something I learned when I get the thought in my head, maybe I should leave the choir. I am not a person who is going to just leave. I will think about it and give myself some space and time because I want to make sure that I'm not just going through a temporary crisis, because there are tough moments during the season. There are tough moments with working with a choir. You know what it's like. I mean, the pressure and the expectations and the time constraints and everything, and you have to just handle it, everything, and it's not easy. So when I got the thought of leaving one of my choirs, I gave myself some time, and I will advise you to think about this in a longer period of time. That said, again, there are different situations. So if you're thinking about leaving the choir because you don't feel good, that's a very legitimate reason to leave, because the point is not to suffer in this position. And I will say that if you do not feel good because of the atmosphere in the choir, because of the community in the choir, if you don't feel like things are working, if you don't feel like you are connected with them, if you just don't feel good, my advice would be, can you do something differently? If you don't want to leave when it comes to the position and the choir, but you do want to leave because you do not feel good when it comes to the atmosphere in the choir, I ask you, is there something you can do differently to improve the atmosphere? Because maybe you don't want to leave. Maybe you're just stuck in a position, and that's okay, but is there anything you can do to improve the atmosphere, to make the atmosphere better for you? There is a high chance you already tried to do everything you could. If you don't think that things have improved, then yeah, maybe it's time to leave. I mean, we are in a choir director's position. We are a single person, you know, and we can try to improve the atmosphere of the group. And I would argue that we are able to do a lot in that regard. So if you do a lot and still the atmosphere is not good, then it's really not something you can help with anymore. So it is a legitimate reason to leave because it just doesn't feel good. And the atmosphere is something that is toxic, which I know people don't want to admit, but a lot of choir atmospheres are toxic. If you've done some things to improve it and you don't think there is a difference, then yeah, maybe it's time to leave. If you want to leave because you don't like the choir, again, people don't talk about that, but there are choir directors who actually do not like their choir for different reasons. Maybe they don't like the people. Maybe they don't like the atmosphere. It's not a toxic atmosphere, but it's not the atmosphere for them. Maybe you don't like the choir because you don't know them well enough yet. Maybe you will get to like them. Or maybe you don't like the choir because you don't think they're good enough for you. You think they should be doing better, and you're frustrated because they don't follow your instructions in the way you want them to follow, because maybe the choir is not that good as you want them to be. Well, in that case, I would ask you this. How long have you been with your choir? I would argue that if you have not been with them for at least 6 months, you cannot know what your choir is capable of. I have a lot of friends who want to quit their choirs few months in, and I wish I could tell them something like, if it's not a toxic atmosphere and if it's not a toxic environment and you are not suffering, you're just dissatisfied, stay for the whole season if you can. For at least 6 months or a year, because every beginning is hard and you need the time to see the progress. So things will not happen overnight. Things will not happen just because you want them to happen. You have to try different ways. You have to try different techniques. Maybe some of the techniques will work eventually, but you cannot know that in a few months. 6 months to a year is the process. So if you're thinking about leaving your choir, just try to stick it out for a few months more just to see whether things will improve. Because it's not easy to leave a choir, especially if you're attached to them, if you know the people, if you have a community surrounding the choir. It is not a simple decision to leave. So just give it a few more months if you can. If you can't, again, it's your life. You do not owe anyone to stay, but if you can try, stick it out a bit more just to see. Try to think of it as an experiment. Like, will this work? Will this work? Like, it could be a good practice field for you as a choir director to try to just accept that things are not working out, but I will give it a few months more to see whether some other things will work. You want to leave the choir because you do not feel good enough. I would say that if you don't feel good enough, and I say this here on the channel, I think you are much better equipped to be a good choir director if you keep thinking, at least in the beginning, that you're not good enough, than the person who thinks he or she is made for the position and they will do anything, especially when it comes to amateur choirs, because amateur choirs is a whole different ball game. So if you're thinking that you're not good enough, just stop and try to think, are you running away, or you are just really not good enough? Because it's okay. I mean, sometimes you're really not good enough. But if you're here on the channel and watching this video and thinking that you're not good enough, I would argue that the fact that you're here says a lot, and maybe you do care about the choir more, and maybe you are willing to try some things a bit differently in order to overcome that feeling. Maybe you're good enough, but you need more time, you need more practice. The best way to get the time and the practice is to stay a little bit longer in the choir. Maybe you are good enough, but it's your imposter syndrome or your lack of confidence syndrome. Or maybe your choir really thinks that you're a good choir director, but you are just insecure. My point is, try to see whether it's just your feeling or you're really not up to the spot, because both things can be true, and it would be a shame that you convince yourself that you're not good enough for your choir, because chances are maybe you are good enough and you are willing to try things differently and you are willing to improve and you are trying to improve. That says a lot. That says that you care about your choir and you think about yourself in that way, that you could be better for them. That's a very good quality to have as a choir director. If you legitimately think that you're not good enough, I ask you, can you step it up? Can you try more? Can you try better? Can you try something, getting some advice? Can you try getting some lessons from someone? Can you try getting some other choir directors to be a guest choir director with your choir just to see? Can you talk to someone? Can you go to a seminar or something? Because I ask you, if you don't feel good enough and you want to leave, that's okay. But if you want to leave because you don't feel good enough, but you like the job and you want to stay, but you're afraid to, there are other ways. Okay. There is also a situation where you think that you're not good enough, but it's your ego speaking. Maybe you're not being realistic. Maybe you want more praise and more accolades for your position and you're not getting it, so you feel like you're not doing a good job. If that's the case, choir shows you you're a good choir director if they keep doing what you say, if they keep doing what you tell them to do, so that's a good enough accolade, trust me. But if they keep bickering and if they keep interrupting you and if they don't show you respect, there are videos here on the channel when it comes to that. Again, if it's not the sure I'm leaving the choir, I'm quitting, then ask yourself, is it me? Is it them? Can I improve? How much do I care? Do I want to stay? In the back of my head, what does my heart say? Will I regret it if I leave? That's a very big question. Will I regret it if I leave? Maybe you will, but maybe not. It's like leaving a relationship, I would argue, okay? Sometimes you can work on it and sometimes you don't. You just cannot work on it anymore. Things are not working and that's okay. And it's very tough to be in that position, but if it's the wrong relationship for you and you leave it, then you will feel happier. And maybe you will just have a memory of the choir and the relationship, but your life will become something else and that's okay. Of course, if you have life reasons to leave, you're pregnant, your family's going through a crisis, life, job, anything, you're not getting paid enough or at all at the position and you don't have the time to spare anymore, it's okay. It's not an easy decision, but it is your decision, it is your decision in most cases. And finally, you want to leave because everything is good, but you just want to move on. I'm currently in that position. I've been with my choirs for a very long time and I have a lot of choirs and I have a lot of stuff going on and I'm 36 and I'm thinking about things. I have never actually left a choir. Ha ha ha! Every time I do a video here on the channel, that there is a reason this topic doesn't come out of nowhere. I don't know, it's just, I keep thinking about leaving a choir, one of my choirs, because I think there might be time to change certain things. I've given a lot. I don't know if I have a lot to give anymore. That's really the biggest reason why I'm thinking of leaving. And I feel a bit guilty because I'm thinking about that, because I know they depend on me, they count on me, they think I will be here forever. Not because I said so, but because they're used to me and they're very attached to me. But I am a strong believer that everyone is irreplaceable and I shouldn't suffer my whole period of life just to make them happy or not worried. So yeah, I'm in my thought processes when it comes to that, but I will say that I've been in my thoughts for a few months, but actually a few years. And I think it will take me another year. Not because I am weak, but because I want to be sure. I want to be sure. I know myself and I know what I'm like when it comes to making decisions. And it helps if you know yourself when it comes to this particular thought process, because I know that I'm a person who thinks a lot. It takes a lot of time for me to, go through every motion. But once I go through the whole process, then I'm done. Then I make the decision and that's the final decision and I don't go back on my decisions, on my thoughts. I just, I've processed this for a very long time. I made the decision, I executed the decision, and that's okay. So, it helps when you know what kind of a person you are like and what your natural process is. If you're thinking about leaving the choir, just remember, give it time, give it space, give it thoughts, but you're not guilty of anything and you're not obliged to stay if you don't want to. You will be okay. Whatever you decide, you will be okay. That said, if you started to think about leaving your choir while everything is good, I think it's the same when somebody asks, should I break up with this person? And the answer is always, well, if you're asking me that, then maybe that's a sign you should break up. Always a very tricky place to be in. Okay, so whatever you decide, good luck. Everything will be okay. There are lots of videos here on the channel, including a video called How to Survive as a Choir Director, which I will link. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you find it helpful, and I hope you find your trajectory soon and easily. Thank you for watching. Conduct well, conductors, and I'll see you next time. Bye!